Welcome to worship in the Unitarian Universalist Church of Charlotte. The womanist writer and activist Audre Lorde says, "There are many kinds of power, used and unused, acknowledged and otherwise. One kind of power," Audre Lorde describes, "is the energy created by the sharing of joy. When we share our joy with each other, it blooms into celebration, a shared power," as Audre Lorde puts it, that gives us, she says, the energy to pursue genuine change within our world, rather than merely settling for a shift of characters in the same weary drama. Let us immerse ourselves in this shared power this morning, singing our thanks and being joyful in the day we have been given. As we prepare to sing, please turn and welcome the people around you, and you'll notice our kids are with us for the beginning of the service, so be sure to welcome them.
We light this chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, with the words of Gabrielle Roy. The more the heart is sated with joy, the more it becomes insatiable.
Welcome again to today's service. We're happy you're with us today in this room or joining us remotely. We're pleased to have guests with us today. Our members would like to greet you personally following the service. So, if you are visiting, please raise your hand and keep it up. Members, take note of guests seated near you. After the service, please invite them to join you for coffee and conversation in Freeman Hall. Should it enhance your experience of future services, you can find both a large print order of service and a personal hearing assistance device on the table in the entrance where you came in. There's also an elevator available. If you'd like to learn more about us, please fill out a yellow card and place it in the offering basket later in the service. Members with a life event to share may do so on the reverse side of the cards. The cards and offering envelopes are on the clipboards located at the end of the rows. Please begin passing those down now. Visitors interested in hearing about how to become a member can talk with our membership coordinator, Kelly Green. She's right there. Her contact information is also on the back of your order of service. Again, to each of you, welcome.
Children who are sitting with their families who want to come forward for the story time, we'd love to have you up here. Yay! Big children. Good morning, you guys. Good morning. Oh, yay! Our youthful children. Yay! Thank you. So, if I were to tell you that we are going to have a celebration, what would you say we need? What do we need to celebrate? People? All the things that taste nice in the world, yes? Including cake. Henry, good?
Chuck E. Cheese.
Chuck E. Cheese.
That's you.
Bounce you, okay. Fun. Music. Confetti. Abby. Joy. I love it. Somebody's been listening. Balloons. Very good. Last one. Animals. Yes. Yes, exactly. So it's true that when we celebrate a birthday, or I know for me, a graduation party, we do have all those things, decorations and balloons and cake. But I want to tell you a story about a different kind of celebration that happened in a very ordinary living room, okay? So it's not what you would usually picture, and there wasn't even any cake. But it was 1924, so almost 100 years ago. And the writer and inspirational speaker, Helen Keller, was sitting in the living room with her family, and they were all gathered around the radio. Do you know what a radio is still? So there they were, and they were so excited because they'd heard there was going to be some very special music playing. It was going to be Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, and her family was so excited. But Helen Keller was wondering how she was going to participate because she could not see and she couldn't hear. But then, right before the music started, someone removed the cover on the speaker where the music was about to play. And Helen Keller, they said, "Why don't you touch the speaker?" Just like that. And so she did. And as the music came on, she could feel it flowing through her, even if she couldn't hear it. So the music started. Helen could even feel the difference between the drums and the violins. And later, when she wrote about it, she said that it felt like a heavenly ocean of vibration. And so she was sitting there and she felt just filled to the brim with joy. And she thought, there's only one thing I can do with all of this joy. So she ran to her typewriter. Have you ever seen a typewriter? Yeah. There she is. And she decided to write to the radio station that had played that beautiful music to thank them. And this is what she wrote. She said, "I felt the chorus grow more ecstatic, swift and flame-like, until my heart almost stood still." She described the joy she'd felt, and she said, "Thank you for the joy you are sending out into the world." So here is what I want you to remember today as you go off to your classes. Even though there were no balloons, decorations, or cake, this was a celebration, because celebration is what happens when we share our joy with others. And you all are a great joy to our community. Thank you so much for being here this morning. We're going to sing you with our next song. We're going to sing you to your classes. So elementary and younger, you're going to walk straight to Freeman Hall. And youth, you're going to go directly to your classrooms.
Our reading is a poem by the Muslim mystic Hafiz entitled Cucumbers and Prayer. All day long, the earth shouts, "Gee, thanks!" Such an exuberant gee. It starts throwing things, as if God were passing by in a parade, encouraging rowdy behavior by looking so beautiful that a whole avalanche of mania swoops in. I like this idea of throwing things at God, and especially God making us rowdy. Thus, as soon as Hafiz is out of bed, I start stuffing large sacks with old shoes, cucumbers, and prayers for the upcoming consecrated free-for-all. And who knows what else?
It's not enough to call the wild exuberance that Hafiz expresses in that poem happiness. It's a rowdy, free-for-all reverence for a beauty too vast to contain. It's something more than happiness when we find ourselves swept up in the desire to throw prayers and cucumbers out into the universe. The late psychologist Rollo May would likely agree. He describes at length the differences between a state of happiness and a state of joy. May says, happiness relaxes one. Joy challenges one with new levels of experience. Happiness depends generally on one's outer state. Joy is an overflowing of inner energies that leads to awe and wonderment. Happiness is associated with contentment, joy with freedom and abundance of human spirit. Joy is new possibilities. It points toward the future. Joy is living on the razor's edge, he says. Happiness promises satisfaction of one's present state, but joy is an unfolding of life. When Helen Keller reached out to touch the speaker seated there in the living room with her family, she touched some jumping, throbbing energy that flowed through her until joy bloomed in every corner of her being. The power of that joy grew so immense, she could not hold it alone. So she reached out, she shared her joy with some likely weary radio producer, creating celebration, pulling the reader of her letter into her exuberant thanksgiving for life. It's true that celebration does not require balloons, decorations, cake, or even advanced planning. Celebration is what happens when we share our joy, when we give joy a breathing presence in the world. Celebration makes joy sturdy and real, robust and more enduring, not easily overlooked. Celebration is joy taking up space in the world. Perhaps this is why Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel bemoaned the fact that, as he put it, people of our time are losing the power of celebration. Instead of celebrating, we seek to be amused, entertained. Heschel says, celebration is an active state, an act of expressing reverence or appreciation. Celebration, he says, is a confrontation. I wouldn't have thought that celebration would make an appearance last Sunday here in this room as we navigated the inhumanity of the criminal justice system. As many of you will recall, one of our congregational partners, Christy Puckett-Williams, was in the pulpit. Christy spoke of her own experience of incarceration, being pregnant with twins, and nevertheless restricted to a diet of only 1,300 calories a day. Her experience of movement while shackled. The loneliness and fear that are your constant companions when you're no longer recognized as a full human being by the people controlling your daily life. From this pulpit, Christy spoke directly to those of you in our congregation who are participating in court watching. She thanked the white court watchers for using your whiteness to help tell the story inequity plays out in our court system, it being much less likely that those of us who are white will be harassed or intimidated while observing court proceedings. I would not have thought in the midst of such a conversation that celebration would enter in. Yet there was that moment when one person stood up to show all of us the bright, warm, sun-shining shirt that she was wearing, that all of you wear when you observe in court. And it was hard to miss the phrase written in bold letters across the front of that yellow shirt, "People, not prisons." And there it was. There is gravity in this phrase, of course. There's heaviness behind the insistence of people, not prisons. The wrong that is confining and demeaning human lives is found in that phrase. And yet when I saw that shirt, the color of sunshine, with those words in bold, a breath of celebration entered the room. People, not prisons. There is a spark of joy in those words that threatens to catch fire. A spark of joy that says human life is too precious, too rich with relationship and experience. Human life is too full of possibility and growth and renewal to be imprisoned. People, not prisons, is a defiant thanksgiving, an ode to the beauty and complexity of human life, singing in bright, lively notes. There is too much good here to throw away. Celebration can be a confrontation, Heschel says, and an array of yellow shirts celebrating human life does indeed confront, even challenge, the inhumanity of incarceration. Justice, put in spiritual terms, is a deep reverence for life, for the living world, human beings, and the earth. Justice, put in spiritual terms, is a deep reverence for our connectedness, each to all. Justice is putting this reverence for life and mutual connection into motion. We can show our reverence for life through outrage, through discontent. Our sorrow can honor the fullness of all that injustice threatens and demeans. We can show our reverence for life through amazement, through gratitude, through celebration. Our joy can honor the fullness of all that justice emboldens and builds up. Most often, the work of justice invites us to experience it all at once: outrage and inspiration, joy and sorrow. You may have glimpsed this mingling of sorrow and joy in the Black Lives Matter movement. Behind those 3 words, there are a multitude of heartrending stories and statistics. Unarmed Black children shot dead where they stand. The higher rate of death for Black mothers in childbirth. The higher likelihood of breathing polluted air or drinking unsafe water if you are a person of color. And behind those 3 words, Black Lives Matter, there's a celebration of Black life, a robust, joyful, defiant melody that sings, "Our lives are too precious to not celebrate." You may have witnessed people marching in protest against what is oppressive or corrupt, with their anger and grief scrawled in red on the signs that they're holding up high. And you may have witnessed the way people marching in protest of oppression will sometimes burst out with the rhythmic refrain, "This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like." Which is to say, we celebrate what people can do when we come together with a shared longing for justice. We celebrate that the world we dream of, in which everyone has a voice, in which equity is status quo, we celebrate that the world we dream of can exist in the streets for days, weeks, months at a time. In the work of justice, celebration gives our sorrow and our outrage a dance partner, keeping our most meaningful struggles in hopeful motion toward liberation. Audre Lorde says there are many kinds of power, used and unused, acknowledged and otherwise. One kind of power underutilized is the energy created by the sharing of joy. Lord explains that when we share our joy with each other, it blooms into celebration, a shared power that gives us the energy to pursue genuine change within the world. We may, at times, ask ourselves, is it okay to enjoy our lives, to give in to joy when there is so much suffering in our world? Yes, it is not just okay, it's necessary. It's a required part of the struggle for justice that we show our reverence for life, our unfolding joy as we discover again and again our connectedness with one another. In sharing our joy, we create celebration. And celebration is not complacency, not throwing up our hands and saying, "Oh, well, let the world burn, let's have some fun." Celebration is a state of hunger and hope. Perhaps this is what Rabbi Heschel meant when he said, celebration is a confrontation with complacency, with apathy. Celebration is a confrontation with suffering. As Audre Lorde puts it, when we begin to live in touch with this power and allow it to inform and illuminate our actions upon the world around us, then we begin to give up being satisfied with suffering and with the numbness which so often seems like the only alternative. And, Lord says, once we have experienced that deep and irreplaceable knowledge of our capacity for joy, how can we demand any less of ourselves? How can we demand any less of each other?
morning. I'm John Burns. I've been a member here for a little over 5 years. Many of you may have seen me sort of up over here, probably playing drums or didgeridoo or euphonium or whatever, but this is my first time up here feeling the power and glory of this pulpit. So Eve asked me to talk about joy in my life, and actually I had to spend a fair amount of time filtering out happiness, because I do a lot of things that make me happy and can see that. I had to dig a little deeper to really look for joy that comes sort of within and naturally, but then I found it. Actually, only a couple of weeks ago, I was wearing lederhosen, and I was wearing this hat, and embarrassingly high knee socks, way above the knee, and playing in a little sort of German-Polish oompa band called Frankfurt Wheelbarrow, because we're not as good as Mannheim Steamroller. And so I was over at St. Gabriel's Catholic Church, where they were having a pierogi festival, and 600 people enjoying their pierogies, and we were playing our music, playing a lot of polkas and some waltzes, and this is something I do a fair amount, particularly around October, playing Oktoberfests. And what's interesting is you'll get a few people to come to a polka. Might be someone here who do a polka. You know, a couple people do a waltz maybe. But then we do the chicken dance. And everybody knows the chicken dance, right? Na 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 na. Okay, there's my people, right? So, and that will bring on the crowd, but the best part of the chicken dance is not that, it's the chorus. Da 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 da, da da da, and you link arms and you go around each other, and the kids get so excited, they're like, oh my gosh, we get to link arms and go around with people and get swing and get crazy, and then we get to go around with adults and people we don't know, and you'll see people sort of standing to the side, they're kind of like, I don't know how I feel about the chicken dance, and I come running down and I grab their arm and I go around, and they get happy and they get pulled in, and everyone just gets so excited about going around each other doing the chicken dance. And of course it gets faster and faster and people love it, but it's just this natural spontaneous joy of getting to do this thing that I get the pleasure of every couple of months pulling people into the chicken dance. And of course, if you weren't joyful about it, you'd feel downright silly, because it is kind of silly to do this and this and then go around a circle. But it just naturally brings out some kind of connection between the people there. And it's done at weddings a lot. It's done at all kinds of celebrations. So in my life, looking for joy, I find it pretty regularly doing the chicken dance.
Thank you, John. And how could you not want to learn more about how to engage in the life of this congregation after that? If you are looking for more specific ways, you can look through the back of your order of service, explore our website, or subscribe to our weekly e-newsletter, Currents. Just a reminder this morning to please help us host our homeless neighbors on Sunday evenings by signing up through Currents or across the way in Freeman Hall. One of the gifts of being here together in community on Sunday mornings is we can hold the full spectrum of human experience in one room, joy and sorrow and everything in between. And this morning, we are continuing to hold Elaine Camp in our hearts as she mourns the death of her sister. Joe and Lauren Simmons are in our prayers as they mourn the death of Joe's grandmother. We are sending love to my dear colleague, our minister Jay Leach, his wife Melissa, and child Emerson, as Jay's mom enters hospice care and Jay's father is recovering from surgery. We hold in our hearts Nancy and Rich Green, who share their gratitude with this community for the kind and enduring support you've shown during Nancy's hospitalization and continuing recuperation. If you are carrying a joy, sorrow, or remembrance that you would like to honor this morning, in just a little bit when the offering music is playing and the baskets are being passed, you're welcome, member and visitor alike, to come forward to light a candle. And we hope you feel held by this community when you do. Would you be with me now in meditation? Sitting more comfortably, deepening your breath, maybe relaxing your shoulders away from your ears, relaxing your jaw, your hands, so that you can take in the words of this poem by Anne Sexton entitled Welcome Morning. There is joy in all. In the hair I brush each morning, in the cannon towel newly washed that I rub my body with each morning, in the chapel of eggs I cook, in the outcry from the kettle that heats my coffee each morning, in the spoon and the chair that cry, "Hello there, Anne," each morning, in the Godhead of the table that I set my silver plate and cup upon each morning. All this is God right here in my pea green house. I mean, though often forget, to give thanks, to faint down by the kitchen table in a prayer of rejoicing as the holy birds at the kitchen window peck into their marriage of seeds. So while I think of it, let me paint a thank you on my palm for this God, this laughter of the morning, lest it go unspoken. The joy that isn't shared, I've heard, dies young.
Steve Goodyear, author of 1 Minute Can Change a Life, says, "I give best when I give from that deeper place, when I give simply, freely, and generously, and sometimes for no particular reason. I give best when I give from my heart." We will now give and receive the morning offering.
of Wendell Berry, expect the end of the world. Laugh. Laughter is immeasurable. Be joyful, though you have considered all the facts. Please be seated.